Good morning, everyone, and welcome. My name is Mike T. Brown, and I'm the founder and CEO at WinWin. I'm also proud to serve on the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center Advisory Board. For those of you who may not know, the Center is a nonprofit dedicated to enabling entrepreneurs from all over the world to realize their maximum potentials and grow. As you may have seen in the chat, the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center, along with their partner Mentor Cloud, launched a free mentor matching platform for entrepreneurs called Mentor Makers. It's amazing. Find or become a mentor today by using the link in the chat. Now, one quick housekeeping item. We will open up for live Q&A at the end of the event. So please submit your questions in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen throughout the presentation. And I just want to say that none of what the center does could be possible without all of the amazing support from its sponsors, including NASDAQ, Lehigh University, Bank of the West, KPMG, Wilson Sonsini, Woodruff Sawyer, BPM, NZTE, and Microsoft for Startups. We are humbled by their contributions. Now, during these unique times, the center is curious how sentiment is among entrepreneurs that they work with. So we would like to start by taking a quick poll so you can let us know how you're feeling about your business right now. So we're going to launch a poll, as you see here. It's very quick and easy. So please just take one moment. Tell us how you're feeling about your business. You feel fearful, anxious, surviving, optimistic. Please take 1 second to click on one of those options. We got a lot of people here. We'd appreciate you taking a moment. Tell us how you're feeling. I'll give you a second to do that. Think about how you're feeling right this moment. What brought you here? How are you feeling this morning when you got up? Wow, okay, let's check out these results. Overwhelming, optimistic. Wow, this must be a group of entrepreneurs, as we tend to be very optimistic. I mean, you have to be, right? We're up against a lot, so we have to have a high level of optimism. So I'm glad to see that. We'll move on. We got one more poll question that we have here, and this is an important one. So I think it'll come up here. What's keeping you up at night? Right, that's always a question you get. What's keeping you up at night? Take 1 second. You got finance, sales, marketing, scale, pivot, team, surviving. A lot of options here, but what's the one thing you'd pick that's keeping you up at night? Last night, what was keeping you up? There's usually quite a bit that may be keeping you up. Tell us what's on your mind. Take one moment and we'll get the results here in just a second. Wow, okay, we kind of spread across the board, but we got finance coming in, and let me tell you, I hear you. This actually is what keeps a lot of entrepreneurs up, whether it's related to making money, raising money, or managing cash flows. There's a lot of things around that can keep you up. So don't feel like you're alone. There's a lot of support and resources out there. And today, you'll definitely be inspired by today's discussion, and I think you'll feel a little bit better about that. So now on to the topic at hand. We're thrilled to welcome our special guest who has created amazing change in the ecosystem. And I can tell you that I'm actually a direct beneficiary of her work, the work that she's done in this ecosystem. And I'm honored to have her as an early investor in my company, Win-Win, as she's one of my favorite people in the entire tech ecosystem. She and her amazing team believed in me and what we were building and have provided the much needed capital and the ongoing support to help bring it to fruition. And that special guest is none other than Arlan Hamilton, founder and managing partner of Backstage Capital. And our moderator for this discussion is Jeff Thomas, Senior Vice President at NASDAQ and the President of the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center's board. You're in for a treat today. Welcome, Jeff and Arlan. And I'll throw it over to you.
All right, Mike, thanks so much. Thank you everybody for dialing in, and I hope you're all excited to hear from a truly inspiring leader, Arlan. So Arlan, your journey is really unique. You've had a long history as both an entrepreneur and now an investor. Can you talk a little bit about your story and how you ended up as an investor?
Sure, and thanks everyone for being here. Thanks, Mike, for the invite. So starting around 2011 or so, really started understanding in my early 30s what startup land was really about, what Silicon Valley was and where it was, and who some of the players were, and had always felt like a couple of things in my life. Felt like an outsider, which I think so many of us do, and also felt like an entrepreneur. And the companies and the projects and the things I had done in the past, starting in the third grade, hadn't always really worked out financially. But there's always something special about the magic of what I had worked on or had built. And I couldn't understand at the time, like, why were so many of my peers, why did corporate life really fit them well? Everybody had insurance and I didn't, and everybody had like a 9-to-5, and I just couldn't make that make sense in my head. And when I discovered through understanding through people like Ashton Kutcher and Troy Carter and all these investors, what startups were, what investing in startups was, I actually felt like I had found my people. I had sort of like a second coming out. It was like, oh, this is why I feel like an island. This is why sort of the mundane or the 9-to-5 doesn't really work for me. And so I got really excited about it. And again, it was through seeing things like, seeing Airbnb and seeing Twitter and all these companies, and kind of tracing their roots and saying, oh, this is like a three-person team out of an office. That's really interesting. And then it was me deciding, okay, I want to start a company. I want to start a tech company now that I have all this experience and understanding. And very quickly learning that 90% of all venture and angel funding in the United States was going to white men. And I had a lot of thoughts, and we could talk about those thoughts, but I had a lot of thoughts at once. But one of them that was prevailing and persistent was, what if there was a fund that did the opposite? What if that existed, and what an opportunity that would be for investors, for the founders, for myself. Being very, very candid, it was I was thinking of it in a sharky way too, because it wasn't a philanthropic desire at the time. So I decided, against all odds, I'm going to start a venture fund, and it's going to invest in underrepresented people.
And last year you wrote a book. It's About Damn Time. And, it's, I think, an important book, and it talks about how you can go from being underestimated and using that to your advantage. So what was it that caused you to write the book, and why now?
Yeah, a lot happened in between that early thought, early 30s and 2020, and it was about an 8 year 9 year period. So much happened. My life absolutely changed. I went from being very having housing insecurity, food insecurity, living not even paycheck to paycheck because I often didn't have a paycheck, just living really close to the bone for so long, for most of my life, and went from that to having this idea and actually breaking into venture capital and breaking in a way that really caused a lot of stir and got people talking and changed the narrative about what a founder looks like and what founder should be in the room. And it's all been I've been in the eye of the storm, so it feels like it's been uh, everything at once in a lifetime at the same time. And so I wanted to reflect on that before I had another decade go by. I wanted to reflect and have like a mile marker for myself and for others. I wanted there to be like a breadcrumb path for people to do this or anything, anything that their moonshot is really, and to say how I did it, and to give some practical, tactical advice. And I wanted to represent the same way I'm doing so, and so many of us are doing so in tech now. I wanted to represent in the business. I'm on a business imprint at Penguin Random House. It was very important to me that it wasn't in the self-help or the this or that. I wanted in the memoir. I wanted it to be on a business imprint because there are so few, especially at the time that I sold the book, so few Black women on the front covers of business books, and just I had seen, and so grateful that there are so many, but I had seen the effect of representation in print by being on the cover of Fast Company in 2018, and just talking to people who have no idea what's going on in Silicon Valley, but saw that cover and it meant something to them. So yeah, it was a lot of things, and it's the past few months have revealed even more to me of what people are getting out of it.
Well, and as you talk about those breadcrumbs and kind of some of the lessons learned in the book, you talk about needing one yes out of 100. And I think that's a really common experience for early stage founders, right? You get told no a lot when you're starting, and there's a lot of reasons why what you're working on isn't going to work. Can you talk a little bit about how you say, persistent
Yeah.
and really kind of seek out that one yes?
Yeah, for the first 3.5 years from deciding I was going to start this fund, I didn't get anyone to invest. I mean, it was a different time. First of all, even before last year, the time in between 2015 and 2019 was a time of kind of evolution. So it was a different time, and people were just not checking for what I had to offer. So to go for 3.5 years without knowing how long that drought would last was a big deal. And I just saw Hustle Fund. They just announced that they raised 33 million plus fund, and they said they had 700 meetings to get to that. And people used to think that I was exaggerating when I said I had talked to hundreds of investors and had no yeses until I got the first 25K and then the next. And so it's true. And that's why I started flipping things. I like to repurpose emotion and different things to our advantage. And one of those things is repurposing what a no is. To me, like the no is just is one more step towards the yes. If you think about it in math, like if it's 1 in 100, that 13th, 14th no is just one more step for you getting it, because you are just odds are that if you're working on something important, if you're working on something that is valuable to anyone in the market, no matter what it is, if it's a fund, if it's a company, if it's a blog, if it's a podcast, whatever it is, whatever you're working on, if it has value, your odds are with you, if you can stay persistent and if you can, be diligent. And that's not to say ask one person 100 times to get the yes. You have to ask many people and go knock on many doors, because you don't want to be someone who doesn't get the message, doesn't get the hint from the person, not even a hint, someone who said, no, I'm not going to invest in you. But you can certainly you can't control them saying no to you, but can certainly control your list and say, okay, well, I'm going to find someone who will.
Well, and I love that idea of repurposing a no. I remember I was talking to a founder of a pretty successful startup in Silicon Valley as his company grew and he started pitching more of the bigger VC funds. One of the things he always asked for after they said no was, can I see your investment memo? Because every VC firm puts together an investment memo when they decide yes or no.
Yeah.
A lot of VCs won't hand that out, but you get 1 out of 100 of those. That's great insight, right? And so when you're talking to entrepreneurs about investing in them or not, I'm curious, we've got a question in the Q&A here. Do you make pre-seed investments? Do you lead rounds? And then also on top of that, if you choose not to invest, how do you handle that interaction with the founder?
Well, the tactical, yes, we mainly invest pre-seed, but we also follow our companies, as Mike mentioned. It took us years to have any follow-on capital because we were still working on fumes, but we now are able to, either through SPVs and syndicates or through a fund that we're raising, we're able to have follow-on. But we do like to meet companies very early. We try to meet them post-idea phase because there's so much competition, and there's just so much competition, and you have to, even if you don't have any capital, you don't have any connections, you should be able to, in our opinion, should be able to do something, and the kind of living proof of that, right? And so we want to see what that traction is, even against all odds or with few resources, pre-seed. But we'll meet you too at seed and Series A. And sometimes we get a lot of, these days, we get a lot of inbound from Series B plus, because they just want the additional, other than capital. Capital sort of comes easy to a lot of people these days. And it's now it's more important than ever to say who is on your cap table, who is going to benefit when you do well. And so people are thinking from that lens. And so we're being invited to a lot of opportunistic plays. But we certainly will see you at pre-seed, and very happy to do so, no matter how large our fund and assets under management get. Turning down someone, we only invest in less than 2% of what we see, so it's a lot of turning down. We don't have feedback for everyone. It's kind of like Y Combinator. They were requested. People asked, well, can you tell us why after 10,000 applications? But they said no, we just can't really do that, and that's the case here. But when someone asks, we're certainly we try to give as much feedback as we can, and we talk internally about it. I mean, Christy Pitts, Brittany Davis, who are partners at Backstage, they both have autonomous investment ability. So we've had multiple conversations about why someone was invested in or why they weren't. The good thing is at Backstage, so far, there's rarely a time where we do invest and I don't understand it. Right? There's rarely a time where I'm like, I don't know if we should have. Sometimes, though, there are times where we pass, and it's not me passing that I do question. And I say, why did we pass on that? We talk about it internally, and we make sure that the founder knows if we can.
That's great. And there's a question here as well. Somebody asked, what is an investment memo? You guys do those formal investment memos at Backstage, or?
Yeah, we don't do them from everything we see because we see thousands of companies, but we do investment memos when it reaches a certain place in our process. And we also do them we do syndicates now. So we have a backstagecrowd.com with syndicate. So we're doing deals with, accredited and non-accredited investors. So with the accredited investors, we certainly present a deal memo, even if it's a company that we've already invested in a month earlier. Without one, we will do that. And more as our check sizes get larger and larger, that is something that is just becoming more of a default for us. But yeah, and I actually don't put together investment memos personally. Usually it's Brittany Davis with Christy supporting, or Chacho putting together something for their companies and for the companies that the ones they're leading or co-leading. And then we'll do that as a team. But it's it's a wonderful, like I love looking at deal memos from 2017 and different years. It's a wonderful paper trail, and it helps you really understand uh, what you were thinking at the time, because sometimes you don't even agree with yourself when you're looking back at things, and sometimes you really understand. You're like, good, I had some sort of instinct that was interesting there, and look how it turned out, and for better or for worse. So it's, it can be anything from a page to 12 pages, something like that, and it's detailed information of the landscape of the company, what's going on at the company, their market, and then our thoughts internally. That's what the secret sauce is. It's like the why. And a lot of times, investors like to share that with each other. So if a company's coming to us, they're raising $1 million, and we put together a great deal memo, or someone else does, we'll ask to share it with co-investors. So helps with time.
And then I noticed some of the VCs here in Silicon Valley, they'll actually do a blog post to talk about why they made investments.
Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously just a great chance for them to kind of share their thoughts publicly once they.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Brad Feld and Sahil and so many people are really good at that.
Yep. Now you mentioned the difference between accredited investors and non-accredited investors. So, and then I also know you guys recently started a crowdfunding campaign to allow non-accredited investors to invest in Backstage. So is that something, can you start out maybe at the top level and kind of describe the difference for the audience, and then talk about your initiatives around crowdfunding?
Yeah, so just accredited, so just an idea of what an accredited versus non is. So accredited in the United States, and please look this up, this is not financial advice, it's just an overview, but it usually means that you you make $200,000 or more every year in the past 2 years, and you think you will in the future on your own, or 300,000 together with your spouse, same thing, or you have $1 million or more assets or net worth, not including your main home. There are also other ways you can be an accredited investor if you are, especially with some new SEC guidelines that just took effect recently that are have to do with what job you have. So if you're at a wealth manager or a fund, really, and you haven't been accredited in the past, you definitely look into that. I'm sure everybody who is in that position has already heard about that, but a lot of junior and other people at firms now can be accredited under certain circumstances. And so there are, these are pretty arbitrary in my opinion. I don't know if what the consensus here is, but I'm one of those people who's speaking out about the fact that somebody making a lot of money or being rich doesn't make them smarter or more savvy. And so why do we even have the distinction, and why don't we put everybody to the same task of, there's education involved, you have to sign off on things, you have to maybe every year get another kind of certificate to say you understand the latest, kind of like a driver's license or something like that. I think that would make a lot more sense than the way it is now, because it's obviously, in my opinion, built to keep certain people out, and the disenfranchised and the poor white people and other people are just being left out because they don't reach that. However, having said all that, there are really cool, starting with the 2012 Jobs Act initiatives, they're really great crowdfunding opportunities now, and for accredited and for non-accredited and for a mixture. So we have Backstage Crowd, which is a syndicate that you go to backstagecrowd.com, you sign up for it as either an accredited or non-accredited, and we share deals with you. And then we have our own raise that we're doing. February 1st, we launched on Republic. So it's republic.co/backstage. And there was, at the time, there's a $1.07 million max that you can do in a Reg CF, which allows unaccredited investors and accredited investors to invest. And we reached that maximum in 9 hours, which was a record for their platform, because the crowd is very into what we're doing. We also did something different. You'll notice that a lot of funds don't do what we just did, and there was a lot that went into kind of building the structure for it, and we will share that far and wide very soon. You can also get on the on the wait list. Now, I can't say too much about it, but I will say it's a good idea to get on the wait list and to keep an eye on your email over the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Fantastic. Well, and I think it's, to your point, anything that kind of democratizes access and gives people the ability to invest to realize some of the growth that happens in the private markets. I think one of the things we've seen here in Silicon Valley for the past 10 years, there's just been this whole mantra of companies staying private longer. Now with the rise of SPACs or special purpose acquisition companies, we are starting to see more early stage companies go public. Obviously, once a company's public, anybody can invest. But I think it's so critical that we update some of the rules and regs so that folks can get access into the private investments in addition to just public investments.
I agree wholeheartedly. So much of the value and so much we're talking about generational wealth is built early before it's public, and that's what it comes down to, is having those new rules in place. And the more we can make that democratized, so that you don't already have to have millions and millions stockpiled in order to play the game, the better.
Now, obviously, one important thing, no matter what stage you're investing in, is having a diversified portfolio. You don't want all your eggs in one basket. Arlan, you've done over 160 deals. So can you kind of talk about the breadth and depth of your portfolio and how you've assembled that?
Yeah, and people hear that number. We're actually at 175 now, and people hear that number and they have different opinions of it. Some people think it's great, and some people think it's just too much and don't understand it. But it really comes down to how it started. So it started, you have to go back to day one, where again, nobody was really having this conversation like we are today. And people, investors who were traditional investors, quote unquote, whatever that means, who were saying that by limiting, quote unquote, myself to underrepresented founders who were women across the board, people of color across the board, and LGBTQ, that I would not be able to find enough deal flow, period. And then I would not be able to find enough that was viable for investment. And that got under my skin real quick. And because it didn't make any sense. It's like, why would I even be attempting this if I thought that were the case? So I said, not only will I find it, but I believe it's out there in droves. And so the original idea in 2014 was to reach 100 companies invested in by 2020 as my sort of, someone who had no money in the bank, no connections, really looking to the future at my moonshot. I said, this is what I believe the market will bear. This is what I believe is out there. And so lots of laughter at the beginning, but when we started seeing companies and one company after the other, and again, the first 3-4 years of making those investments, people still, up until last year, were still, and probably today, still don't get it, but they were still thinking, what is this portfolio? We're agnostic, so we like to cast a wide net. So we have a satellite company next to a hair care company, next to a fintech company and a blockchain company, et cetera, et cetera. And we are all over the United States. And so people are starting to get it now in the last 12 months. The last 12 months, while raising capital is not the only, certainly not the only, and definitely not the most important metric of success or marker of success, you start to see, okay, those $25,000, $50,000 checks that we spent early on. Yesterday, we posted an announcement of $50 million raise by one of our companies that we invested in 2018, I think, where they were having trouble getting anybody to take them seriously just a few years ago. And even recently, working with them, just what is this? How does this scale, et cetera, et cetera. Somebody got it. Somebody figured it out, right? And $50 million later, they're going to be able to expand in an incredible way. And that happens a lot now, where you see so many of these companies maturing. And the idea of it is diversity of the portfolio, just like you would say diversity of your portfolio without meaning race and gender and all that, just diversity. Casting a wide net, but having a sharp focus on underrepresented, underestimated, as we call them. And then also knowing what I didn't know in 2015. I knew that I didn't have an expertise that I could call on and say, I'm going to only just double down on this this vertical or going to go into cloud or enterprise SaaS. I didn't have these certain specific things. The only thing close to it I could have done would probably have been media or something to that effect. But that would have, in my opinion, just really shut us off for a lot of possibility. Today, that couldn't be more clear. And so we will continue to be agnostic. The thing is, though, now major corporations and organizations and other funds come to us and say things like, hey, can we have a vertical accelerator with you because you have an accelerator? Can we really hone in there? And that's something that we're able to do as well.
We got a couple of questions from the audience here. You mentioned you're across the US. Do you invest in any companies outside the US?
Yes, we have no kind of limitations on where we will invest. Except for the fact that we're thoughtful across the board when we make investments. So if we've never been somewhere, that doesn't necessarily stop us, but it gives us pause and it makes us say, are we serving that founder well by investing in them from afar and never having gone to the region or knowing kind of the landscape? But it doesn't stop us. And so what we do is we have made investments overseas. Like one of our accelerator cities is in London. So it was in 2019 and we'll bring it back at some point. But that was a very specific decision to make because all 5 of the companies have a African founder. So it's very kind of a specific combination of knowing what we know and not trying to boil the ocean, really. And then what we do too is we partner with different funds little by little in other regions who do have the toehold on those places. So we have a great relationship with Unconventional Ventures in the Nordics, and they are investing exclusively in women and minority and immigrant founders out of Stockholm and Oslo is where they're based. The 2 partners are based. And we have a wonderful relationship with them. We're sponsoring their accelerator, and I'm a venture partner there. So it's those types of relationships. I'm also an LP, so I'm a limited partner investor in other funds now. And so there are funds that have, great reach that we don't have. So there is a master plan behind the scenes for sure.
And any advice for early stage founders at the seed or Series A level around valuation? There's obviously a little bit of push-pull between what the founder wants, what the VCs will offer.
Yeah, I guess I don't have a lot to offer there, but I would say that I'm in a lot of these deals at seed and Series A and more get on boards and leading and co-leading. And a lot of times, obviously, the person who's willing to make the investment and make a large investment in you is going to give you terms and things like that. But when you're thinking about what your terms, what you want them to be, so many people kind of jump to, well, let me think about what looks right or what this other person did over here or what sounds right or what will get us the money, instead of what do you need to achieve the next milestone you want to achieve over a certain period of time and get your company, on the right footing. And then how much of that do you think it's how much of your company and your equity do you think that is worth? It comes down to that and that alone, in my opinion, not trying to contort yourself to what all these outside forces want. Now, of course, you take that number, but you're fortified in that number, and you take that and see if that's matching what people are willing to do, and then you find a middle ground. But this idea of like, it's almost it's either really far to the one side or the other. It's like really ridiculous valuation that you're putting out there when you have no revenue and no evidence that it's worth this, because you saw, you're trying to do like a Shark Tank deal, and play founder, and that, check yourself there. Or it's you're really undervaluing and you're willing to give up 30-40% in one round because you just want $500,000 or you want $3 million. So it's just having that conversation internally. So with yourself, with your team, with your executive team, before letting others pull you in all sorts of directions.
Well, we've got a number of questions here in the Q&A. What's the best way to get in touch with Backstage? What's the best way to get to hear their pitch? So how do you get a lot of your deal flow? What's the best way?
Most of it is most of it is inbound. The partners are always looking for things on our own, but most of it's inbound these days. So you can go to backstagecapital.com. There's an application section. We have been a zero warm introduction needed firm since day one. And now there's an application process. We see so many deals. And so what we do is we reply in bulk, and we do look at all of the deals. And so when there's interest, we'll be in touch. But you're not guaranteed to get a personal response, but you're guaranteed that someone's going to look at it. So that's, again, backstagecapital.com. There's an application process. Before you apply, pump the brakes, go through the website, look at our current portfolio, click around, look at our green room, look at our podcasts, listen to things, learn more about us, and see if you want to work with us, rather than, okay, they have some pot of money, let me see if I can get that. Because it's an experience more so than anything. And we do have conversation with the 98% who we don't invest in. That's just as important to us as the 2% that we do invest in.
Absolutely. Now, Arlan, as you said, you started having this conversation years before a lot of folks did in Silicon Valley. How do you think attitudes are changing in Silicon Valley in the current environment? Are you starting to see progress being made in terms of shifting the dynamics of where venture funding is going? Obviously, still a long way to go, but what's your take on the current landscape?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a long way to go. We cannot throw parades for people right now. This is not that time. It's just more of this. There is a lot of talk, has always been a lot of talk, and some of it shakes out to real. So you have more talk, which means more of it is shaking out to real. But it would be like running the race, stopping short of that finish line and celebrating, or the touchdown mark. I'm not a great sports guy. Mike can help me with that. Sports person. But it's like, throwing the football down right before the goal line. That's what I see a lot of people doing. Like, oh, we said the word black out loud, you guys. Let's celebrate ourselves. That's not what this is. I do think that the events of last year, and I'll be pointed, and I hate to say it like that, the murder that we witnessed on live television, essentially, and the aftermath of that, I do think that changed things in a way that's irrevocable. I think that that is, we will forever be changed, and a lot of it is coming from allies and people waking up, having been in nap land for a while. But most of where I think the change comes from is you have a lot of Black and brown people right now who won't take no for an answer anymore, who won't take the crumbs anymore. I used to say I came for the crumbs, not the cake. I got it from a rap song. And I'm sorry, I came for the cake, not the crumbs, y'all. I came for the cake, not the crumbs. And it was a cute thing to put on Instagram and put on your wall or whatever. Now it's like, this is it. People are not standing idly by. And whatever rose-colored glasses we all had on, stripped. We see it for what it is, and still to do to this day. So you cannot separate your career, your work from your personal, from politics, like we could before. Now it's all one. It's all wrapped up. So when I leave here, I'm going to most likely hear news out of Washington. And after that, I'm going to most likely have a personal anecdote told to me about something that someone went through. It's all together now. And that is very powerful. So now is the time, before it's too late. Now is the time to get with it.
Well, I think we've got a question here in the Q&A from a minority executive talking about the fact that a lot of times when they look around the boardroom, they don't see a lot of people that look like themselves. At NASDAQ, we recently published a proposed rule filing with the SEC to require more disclosure around the diversity in the boardroom, both female, racial, and sexual orientation. We've gotten a lot of feedback, over 200 comment letters on the SEC's website. We're hopeful we'll be able to get that pushed through as a listing rule here at NASDAQ. But when you think about kind of, when you are in that situation and you don't see a lot of role models, or how do you kind of find that path, to grow when you're not seeing it in your current environment?
Yeah, I think that's comes with an assumption that role models have to come from a certain place. I mean, it is true. I'm the first to say, like, the reason why most white men that I know, no matter what their personality is, the reason why most that I know have a certain confidence that's prevailing is because all of them at some point saw Superman as they were growing up as a default. And that's what they saw. And, we had to find our own Superman. So it kind of plays into, like you say, we don't have a role model. We do have role models. We have each other. We have, just because we were taught in school that, anything about Black people was involved, had slavery next to it, if anything. And then maybe there are a few years where MLK had a blurb here and there. Just because that's what's being fed to us or was fed to us doesn't mean we have to accept it and believe it. And so we are just white and male is not the default in our minds. And so even the word minority, I know I said it earlier when I was talking about unconventional ventures, because I was talking about it in the context of Europe, but I don't even like that term anymore. Like, yes, practically and logically and officially we are a minority group because of this and that, but that even those shrinking terms don't work anymore, because it just has this sort of default button on it. You minority, when we're talking about, when you I think the case is still, when you type in the letters CEO on Google, I think it still brings up just a huge group of mostly white men. That's not the world that I live in, and so many of us live in. So if you don't feel that way yet, I think that's what the book actually helps you start to realize, is that you may be in the minority, but you are not a minority.
Well, and so much of what we do here at the Entrepreneurial Center is around mentorship. Mike talked about our partnership with Mentor Cloud, where we're going through and doing mentor makers, where you can sign up as either a mentee or a mentor for this great new system to match people. How do you think about mentorship separate from investment?
I think that Black founders are over-mentored and underfunded. I'm not the first or the last to say that. I do, though, having said that, we do have a mentor platform at Backstage, because I think it's just a word people use. What I would love to see is, people say sponsorship, right? I would love to see, when I'm talking to people who want to be a mentor to me or to others, I say, okay, the first mentor task is to connect me, like be my connector. That's huge. So if you want to call it mentorship, cool. But what does it actually mean, and what are you actually doing? That's the most important part. So we could call it Spaceship Skyrocket, and as long as it meant that doors were being opened, phone calls were being made behind the scenes, the needle was being moved, and nobody's asking for a handout. Somebody can contradict me, but I don't know lazy Black founders. I don't know of it. Doesn't exist in my world. So no one's asking for a handout. In fact, we have spent our entire lives, from the time we could talk and walk, excelling in a world where that is considered just enough, if that. So honestly, the only reason you would, so you're talking about mentorship, so I don't want to go off on a tangent, but honestly, the only reason you would not want us to have equal footing is if you think we would lap you in a race. and you're either with us or against us. That's how I feel about it. And the last thing I'll say is, like, I always tell people, help or get out of the way. One of those two things is the only option, in my opinion. So if you want to be a mentor, help. If you're not helping, get out of the way, because you're blocking. You're actually doing the opposite of what you're trying to do.
Awesome. Well, let's talk through some of the different stages of the companies that you're invested in and some key advice for founders at each one. We've got a couple questions here in the Q&A. When you're at that earliest stage, how should you think about revenue versus funding? I always refer to revenue as non-dilutive financing. Obviously, a lot of that is based on who can help you open those doors. But obviously, at some point, you need some capital to hire a team, build a product. So how do you think about kind of revenue versus funding in the early stage?
Yeah, I have an online academy and a flagship course, and the course is called How to Raise Capital for Your Company, but it's really a Trojan horse to bootstrapping, because I think what's important is holding on to your as much ownership and equity and power and leverage as possible with your company. And having experienced this myself, not only with the fund, but with other companies, it takes longer and it's more difficult to do things without outside funding, but you have more ownership and power afterwards. So to me, it's worth it. So using bootstrapping or thinking about revenue as your first and second and third investor over someone coming in with a checkbook is a strategic maneuver. And it's either you do that the whole time and you are a MailChimp type of company, that reaches heights, incredible heights, bootstrapping, not taking investment money, or you do it for a certain amount of time, early stages, while everyone else is scrambling to give 25% of their company away for $500K. And that money goes away, by the way. It goes away. It doesn't last forever. While they're scrambling to do that, you're instead saying, I'll add another year or two to this struggle, hold on to that, make the company more viable, more valuable, more viable and valuable over 1 or 2 extra years. And then, yes, if I want to put the foot on the pedal, I'll take an outside funding, but I'll do it later down the road, where I can ask for more money for the same amount of equity, or less equity for less money, And so that's just where I approach things. When I start my own companies, which I have, I start there. Like, I can pick up the phone these days. I can pick up the phone and pull together some money and investment. People want to invest in what I want to do, which is cool. But that's not the first step I take. I look at it and, like, how do I bootstrap this for as long as possible? I love the crowd. I love the crowd having ownership. But I don't know if it makes much sense for me my aspiration is for 7 dudes in Silicon Valley to have 60% of my company. I don't look at it like that.
So then, as the companies you've invested in are growing and scaling, there's always this trade-off. You can invest in more sales, product, and marketing to grow, or you can invest in the back office, the operations, finance, legal. How do you think about that trade-off, knowing at the end of the day, the CEO has got to basically do an exercise in capital allocation?
Yeah, I think I subscribe to the idea of, like, Naval talks about this from AngelList. He talks about being able to build, being able to sell. If you can do both, you're unstoppable. But at least having one or having both on your team, so it's you, a co-founder, you or someone you trust. So I think a good salesperson can sell anything once. But if you don't have the product and the infrastructure to back it up, you're not going to sell it again. And that's going to happen really fast. So you're going to have this, and then it's going to flatline or even plummet. So I would, and I spend more time building the thing the product, making it just as great as it can possibly be, then I do spending money and time on marketing it. Because a lot of times word of mouth and other organic ways of promotion that you don't have to necessarily put your thumb on the scale happens on its own when you've invested more in the product itself. So it's not across the board that way. It's not always that way, but I like to sprinkle the marketing in um, on top of. I know once they get there, they're gonna love it. They're gonna tell people about it. They're gonna want more of it.
Well, and that reminds me of Tony Hsieh's book, Delivering Happiness, where he talks about how customer service in the early days was his marketing, and the fact that you could just return absolutely anything you wanted when you bought it from Zappos. And everybody was just so blown away by that. Of course, Amazon's now kind of changed the rules on that a bit, but you know, you can overinvest in certain things to really make people talk about it.
I'll say rest in peace.
So, Arlan, you've built, now an amazing franchise, but you still have challenges. What's the biggest challenge that you personally are working on right now as you look to the future?
It is still very challenging. The thing that's very challenging that I think is going to literally change overnight. I don't know what night that might be. It'd be great to have the date on my calendar, but I think I absolutely predict this will change overnight, is going from someone who it took 8 years to raise $15 million, $50K at a time, to being someone where we have hundreds of millions of dollars under management, which I do think we're at an inflection point. And that is going to flip where so many times I've tracked stories like that. I think we're almost there. It's going to take a couple of events that I can foresee happening, but I think it happens soon, where that is not so much of a moonshot. It's just a kind of a foregone conclusion. And so the reason that that's a struggle is not because of any sort of greed or FOMO or any of that. It's simply because, like you said before, we have this incredible, very large portfolio, and many times we are still sitting on the sidelines and their subsequent raises where that allocation could have been ours. And we were doing the work of a lead or doing the work of a board member, but we simply don't have the bank account of the next person who may have done less or may have done equal.
Got to keep working for the cake, not the crumbs.
That's right.
All right. Last question for you. In this age of COVID, I think we're all going to be living in this virtual environment for a little bit longer. How do you recommend people maintain existing relationships and forge new ones, given that we're not out there in person for the time being?
I think I could spin some stuff right now and be very inspirational. I know how to do that, but I'm going to be real and say that is difficult. It is difficult. The more, especially if you're in a leadership position or you have a lot of people who depend on you. I found that the disappointment from people in me not keeping up with every single person in my phone book, it gets to you. So I think kind of forgiving yourself is a really good step before you start any tactical things. It's like just saying, I'm not going to get this perfectly right because nobody can, no one person can. And making it more about quality than quantity. So having standing calls is very helpful for your calendar. Having a standing one-on-one with some key people at your company, doing that in groups to just be a face for people and be there for people. 100% every single time we have our Monday calls, and we're used to being remote, so that wasn't too tough for us, but every single time we have our Monday calls at Backstage, the first 10 minutes is how's everybody doing, what's going on, rather than let's get right to it, because in a lot of cases that's the only time we do have to ask that question. And then when it comes to forging new relationships, or actually going back to existing relationships, there's friends, there's family, there are stakeholders, there are people that you work with. There's just so many categories of people. And like I said before, no matter if that's 10 people in your world or 10,000 people in your world, you have to, you can only do what you can do and have that intention. And maybe you have a newsletter that goes out instead of trying to keep up with everybody, or you do what works for you. Maybe you have a podcast that you send to people every month or something like that. New relationships is just repurposing a negative here. Like this is it, this situation we're in may have been a negative to the average person, but you're a founder, you're an entrepreneur. This can't be a negative for you. This is where you shine. This is where you innovate. This is where, rubber hits the road. And so just being creative and having fun with this, like, how do I put on a webinar? Do I put on like a social? And please don't make all your socials revolve around alcohol. There are a lot of people more and more today that are sober or not wanting to connect the two, especially because we're confined. So if you have a happy hour, make it something a little different. Put a spin on what your happy hour is. I know groups who it's 40 Black women in a certain industry who get together every second Tuesday of the month or this or that on Zoom, and hey, bring your kids and have them there. And the sky is the limit. Whereas before we did have very specific things we were able to do because of logistical limitations, financial limitations. Now we have, I don't even know where, if we could reach the ends of the opportunity that we have.
Well, Arlan, thank you so much for sharing your insights with the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center community. We truly appreciate your time. Your messages today have been inspirational, educational, and we can't thank you enough.
Thank you all. Really appreciate it. Thanks for having me, and thanks for spending the hour with us.
Awesome.
Thanks, everybody.